Okay.
Great.
That's the podcast.
That's it.
I'm thinking of clapping things.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of I'm Thinking of Watching Things, the podcast that now has a name. We are 4 film majors who wanted to talk about movies, and so we thinly disguised that reasoning as a podcast. So here we go. Today we're talking about the social dilemma, but before we start on that, I want to ask you guys, in honor of our crumbling democracy, what is your favorite dystopian movie? We'll start with Alicia.
Okay, this time I'm ready. The one that I have is not necessarily my absolute favorite because I feel like I have several favorites and they're going to be covered by you guys anyway. So I am going to go with Strange Days because this summer it has been particularly relevant. And I would die for Angela Bassett. And it's underrated. So yeah, Strange Days.
Damn it, you stole mine. That's what I was going to say. I got to scramble. Well, I guess I'll go because I got a backup lined up. I'm Arjun, and I guess I'll say The Matrix because it's one of my favorite movies ever. I don't know if it thoroughly fits into the dystopia because half of it isn't really a dystopia, but I guess maybe it is, so I'll ride with it. The Matrix, but Strange Days and Catherine Bigelow fucking kill.
Brooke, you got one?
Sure. Yeah, so I took an entire dystopian science fiction class with one Tanya Stadelman. Pretty good. So I was basically only thinking of movies from that syllabus. I didn't consider The Matrix, but I do like The Matrix a lot. But I really liked Children of Men from that one. I don't know, just really good. The one take sort of style action scene thing. You get some blood on the camera, classic, beautiful, which is really good. And also a shout out to The Handmaid's Tale, which is not a movie, but a series that I started watching illegally and made it through about 6 episodes. But it was really good. And my friend, with the passing of RBG, photoshopped me into one of the Handmaid's Tale outfit things. And I'll just say, if it comes to that, red is my color. So I am prepared for the future. But yeah, so special shout out to Handmaid's Tale too.
Oh no.
And shout out to Tanya Stadelman too.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I guess we're not sending this podcast to the film and media department.
My mind went through that same journey there.
We can shout it out to
her. My name's Caleb, and my favorite dystopian film, I'm choosing between 2 Tarkovsky films, Stalker and The Sacrifice. I think I'll go with Stalker because it's more of a clearly defined dystopia, and the sci-fi mystery of the world, of the zone and what it does and how it plays on the mind. Still, I don't understand it, and I won't pretend to, but it really keeps my brain moving, and that's something I always appreciate. So guys, we're talking about the social dilemma. Did anybody have any strong reactions to this film? Does anybody, let's start out with, did we like it? Did we hate it? What's going on? Arjun?
I guess you talk about strong reactions and not really, because mostly I was just kind of bored by it. And as much as I thought the sort of style, and I think that's a big reason of why we picked it, the sort of mix between the drama and the documentary style was interesting and innovative in a way. I also didn't think it was executed super well and didn't mesh super well. And I don't know, it was scary to me and freaked out, and definitely made me in my head about my social media use for about, I don't know, probably still until now afterwards. But at the same time, I can't say I loved it, even though I did think it was a pretty thought-provoking and interesting subject matter.
That's a good place to start at with the fiction and documentary hybrid stuff. Did that work for you guys? Because it did not work for me. It was the corniest thing to me to just pop to this fictionalized narrative of this boy who gets radicalized but to the extreme center. What was that? What on earth? It's like, I mean, it's like the film was like, all right, we don't want to make fun of the alt-right because we'll get people mad at us, and we don't want to make fun of the far left, so we're just gonna the extreme center. And it was just man, like I
and it also seems to be like the adult view of, you know, like young people don't vote, or, you know, the issue that people have with both Biden and Trump, like it took that and made it like something very, I was about to say very interesting, but really not interesting at all. And yeah, the fact that he was radicalized, but like in such a kind of lame, kind of passive way, he just kind of stumbled, spoilers I guess, he got like kind of stumbles into this protest in his town, and then just like stands there looking around, and then kind of gets like trampled, and then is like trying to get up, and then a police officer is like, whoa sir, like hands up, and he's like, whoa, what? And like that's not, it was like the least compelling narrative of all time. And yeah, like everything, like the cast was good, and you know, some like good familiar faces. When Vincent Kartheiser showed up, I was like, what the fuck?
Is he the guy from Booksmart? Is that the
No, that's Skylar Gisondo.
Okay.
Yes. I'm talking about Mad Men, Pete Campbell.
Oh,
Special place in my heart.
Oh, he was the three of them.
Inside Out, essentially.
Yeah.
Inside Out starring
AI
Vincent Kartheiser.
technology. That's all I could think the entire time. And also, it like too forcibly reminded me of, I had to like watch a screen recording of like one of last year's Call 300 event things for like a class just this last semester, where they were talking about how technology has ruined this like one like religious pilgrimage experience. So it was like a woman giving a talk, but then it was intercut with the William and Mary Theater Department putting on a performance of how technology was ruining a pilgrimage. And it was literally like this guy that was like hiking, and then he was like, I gotta check Facebook. And I was like, this is too similar to this. So that was also like rolling around in the back of my mind, but I don't know.
Speaking
I
of,
gotta say though.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I watched The Magnificent Ambersons this morning. Slight tangent. And ever since I've seen The Social Dilemma, I'm like seeing it in other things, and you wouldn't think that Orson Welles film from the 40s would have it, but it's Joseph Cotton like creating the first like non-horse carriage, like the first automobile, and they have like this dinner time discussion, and like one of them's like, it'll ruin the brains of us, we won't know how to ride a horse, and we won't know how to, and it'll change the way we think, and it'll like cars are the evil, like I was just like, that's the social dilemma.
Well, yeah, what the guy said about the bicycle. Also, I'm gonna call it The Social Network at some point, just so you all know.
Well, did you guys ever feel like it was like kind of directly responding to The Social Network in a way? Like I felt like there were allusions, even down to like the clicking of the title card and like the as like the social
Let the
dilemma came
hacking
on the
begin.
screen. And like I feel like that is like the definitive like social media or social networking, and sort of like the way it's taken over our personalities is bad fiction movie of the past 10 years. And like I feel like it is kind of grappling with it in a way. And frankly, like I was gonna say this earlier, like the three people like doing the little inside out thing was kind of the only part of the movie I thought was super interesting in a way. Like the whole like family drama I could care less about, but if you just gave me like half an hour more of them like pulling the strings, I'm kind of down for that.
They're fun. I like them.
Yeah, it seemed like a weird way that like they were not trusting the audience to like grasp any of the concepts they were saying. So they were like, we're gonna spell it out, like we're gonna dumb it down even more for you. And I feel like if it was like one step away from just doing like hand puppet style, but like on a much larger like like theoretical issue. I was like, what are the ethics of like blending drama with fact, which is something that they're like criticizing in the like fake news, whatever. It's like a big film topic that people talk about, is like documentary style, is documentary truth, or it's put together. You are taking an interview, which I'm sure like all those interviews were like an hour long or whatever, and we're only seeing like 30-second sound bites from each of them, and then it's like just going a whole nother level and just totally adding in like a drama component, which I don't think really worked for me. But
I think I like it when like documentaries are more transparently subjective or dramatized, because like, you know, most people I mean, I assume all of us, you know, having like talked about this to death, understand that documentary is film and like inherently subjective, but most people don't think of it that way. And so I kind of appreciate when it's almost like anthropology, like, you know, you're never going to be fully objective. So, you know, just like be upfront about your own, like what you're trying, your message, I guess, and your style and all that. So I kind of prefer documentaries that are more emotional or more transparently like talking about their own message and being upfront about it. But yeah, like the dramatization doesn't serve that much of a purpose. Like, yeah, they're just illustrating what they're telling us, and what they're telling us, most of it I think we already know. I mean, obviously not everybody who will be watching this knows everything they're talking about, but most of the stuff about, you know, like the problems that like technology and social media have caused, we've talked about a lot. And the new stuff to me, or the interesting stuff, was the interviews with and the focus on people who created the tech talking about their regrets. So I like that, but yeah, it's difficult because it's like, oh, just because I already know like tech has like done all this horrible stuff, like doesn't mean that they shouldn't make a movie about it. Like, and also it's interesting how there hasn't been, I don't think there's been a super mainstream doc about this yet. I don't know. Am I wrong?
I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe like the Snowden documentary in a way from like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But besides that, I think you're kind of right. Yeah.
It feels so
late. Interesting you bring up the talking heads, which I kind of didn't like that. I mean, I thought it was interesting getting their perspective, but at the same time, like the interviewer was really letting them just kind of like shirk responsibility in a way and be like, I don't know how this happened. Like, couldn't have been my fault. We thought we were all doing the right thing. Like, he would butt in, but never to actually sort of like push them in any sort of direction. And exactly like you're saying, like you have to have at least like a journalistic sort of, you know, questioning and like interest in these sort of things, not even if you're going to be subjective. And I didn't really even felt like it had that, because, you know, like you're just letting these people say these sort of outlandish things about these things that they were involved in, and sort of like saying like, oh, I don't know how this could have happened, where it's like, I don't know, like it seems like you were probably a pretty important part of it.
That was the issue with I don't remember which one, but one of the Fire Festival documentaries, like when they were interviewing people like Fuck Jerry, and they were just like, yeah, it's crazy, right? And it's like, yes, you did this.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like that one guy, like the sort of hippie looking guy, the white guy with the dreads, I actually like really liked what he was saying. And Tristan, like I thought both of those guys
who has a podcast. He has a podcast with another guy who was who was featured.
Oh, should we have him on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what Tristan had to say, and I liked you know, some other people, bits and pieces here and there, but generally I'm like realizing how much talking heads just does not do it for me. Like if I think about my favorite documentaries, it's like Grey Gardens or Salesman, or like these like ones that are literally just like, I mean, obviously not literally, as we've talked about, documentaries film and it's subjective, but whatever. But it's like a camera's going to watch something happen, and then you're going to see it, and it's edited and whatever. But these like still shots, and it's like a guy just like talking, and it, like Arjun said, it doesn't seem like they're really getting interrogated. It's just sort of like they're given a platform to say whatever they want. I don't know, something about that messaging didn't like really land with me, and I think that's because the fictionalized parts are supposed to be that pathos, like they're supposed to be the like emotional sort of connection you have, but they're just not, it sounds like, for all of us. And I was just, the whole time I was thinking, and my friends and I were talking about it after we watched it, which was like, if they had just taken out all of the fictionalized parts and instead interviewed like real life people whose lives have been like irrevocably damaged by social media. Like let's talk to a mother of someone whose daughter, like when they were talking about like the rising suicide rates in our generation, like let's talk to people around, you know, somebody who that's impacted, and let's like get their story and let's hear them out, and let's, you know, that's what I was going through my head, is like let's expand this to real life and not shove this like weirdly strange like political thing that doesn't really work at all. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not a huge documentary person, watcher, viewer, whatever. So I was okay with the talking heads. They like, it did it for me, the background music, but I don't know, I guess in terms of like new stuff, I feel like it is like to like understand like our perspective on this, or like being in the like William and Mary DC Institute or whatever, where I've now done it for 3 years in a row and we've talked about it a lot. But I don't think it is something that the average person, maybe not even within like our generation, or like I know like my parents or family members that use Facebook and use it pretty frequently. It's something that I don't think that they are thinking about like at all in any sense. So I guess if I want to be like optimistic about it in that sense, I'm glad that it is on like a more, you know, like widespread platform that they might be like thinking about these things. But a new thing that it did have me thinking about was, and I think I mentioned it, the psychology aspect of it. Like my little like psychology degree was like shaking a little bit on the wall, and I was like, oh my God, I can connect with this now. But it was something that I was really interested in, just from like personally, I was interested in media and how it affects, you know, suicide rates or depression, or like, for me, like body image issues through things like Instagram and stuff is something that I'm personally interested in. But I really liked the discussion of the like marketing techniques, or like the psychology stuff that is like weaponized and like built into the softwares and the platforms. And yeah, I don't know if you guys want me to like talk more about how, because I literally did the like rat training thing that they were talking about with the same methods that is built into the software, and the like intermittent like ratio things. Like I did that with a rat, and I have video footage so I can like talk more on that if need be. But that was just like a new lens for me to look at it that was interesting to me.
Well, Brooke, let me ask you a question. Do you think that social media can exist without that sort of like rat pushing, manipulative, algorithm?
That's the entire thing throughout this. And I like the style of the documentary is very much like an hour and 20 minutes of doom and like 10 minutes of optimism at the end, where they were asking the people like, okay, so like how do you want to solve this? And all of them had like very like pretty much vague ideas about like corporate accountability or whatever, but not much on the end of like how I think that this would change how a user uses it, and especially like the idea of like a dopamine release or whatever when you scroll up and you're scrolling up and you want to see like new stuff, or you want to be tagged in photos and everything. And it gets at like a much more deeper thing about like related to like image issues about how many likes you're getting and whatever. And I don't know how that's going to change now that people are accustomed to that, other than limiting your social media intake, or, you know, stop posting, deleting your accounts, which I don't think is like feasible for that many people. And I don't think it necessarily has to be But for myself, I think it is good to like create some boundaries. Or I know like personally, I have had like my own close group of friends like message in the group chat or whatever about how bad they feel specifically about their like bodies and stuff from seeing like Instagram people. And a while back, I not that like I just started following a lot more like plus size influencers and everything. So basically my entire feed is like curated towards body positivity, which we can get into at like a later time if you want. But yeah, I don't know. For me, deleting is not really an option because I do like to engage in it, but definitely curating things in a way that's not like reaffirming my bubble, but at least not making me see things that are like harmful for my mental health. But yeah. And I don't know how they would change that at a software level.
The thing that I kept thinking throughout this whole documentary was capitalism. The thing the thing that they are they kept being like, oh, we can't really put our finger on it, but like we don't know what to do. It's capitalism. It's in a capitalist system. Like rational companies will exploit like natural human tendencies, and that's just how it is. So they're going to design their app so that people stay on their app more, so that ads pop up, so that they make more money, and that's capitalism. And it's like there's not much you can do, and they just vaguely blanket say government regulation. But even then, what are you going to do there? Because that's bumping into free speech. That's saying like, you know, it's not like you can put like a regulation on somebody like, all right, Instagram can only be open for 2 hours a day by, you know, anybody. It's like you can't do that. So I don't know. I saw a lot of, I mean, you guys know me. I'm sort of like easily doomed, like easily to buy into the doom and gloom. But
well, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking as well, because I mean, you think about the sort of rat pushing the buttons thing that you were talking about. And then also the thing that stuck out to me the most really was that Facebook VP of sales, or whatever that guy was, the former VP of sales there. We kept saying like, you know, my job was to figure out how to make money off of this thing. And then we saw we saw the models of Google that were being used, and we figured that was the strategy to use. Or maybe it wasn't Google, but I mean, I think you're exactly right. Like it wasn't really equipped, or maybe it didn't really want to go into the sort of capitalistic and corporate nature of the root of these issues. And it sort of focused on the psychological aspect of it, where, I mean, if you don't focus on that, I think it's hard to really, like you said, get to any sort of rational and plausible way of fixing the cause of these issues. And I don't know, you know, maybe that's just not what they were trying to do with this movie. But at the same time, you know, it just felt like it was missing something, exactly what you're saying, especially when you have all of these, you know, executives and former executives who are like, I wonder what could have went wrong. It's like, well, feels like you're completely ignoring the political and like economic, you know, consequences. And, you know, I don't know. I think it's tough.
Yeah, I feel like, so the things they address are the individual psychological effects, and then the larger, like, democracies being destroyed, like, fake news effects. And, I mean, kind of. And I think in the end, when they have those, as Brooke said, 10 minutes of optimism, probably less, the focus seemed to be, I mean, I should rewatch it, I never will. But the focus of that part seemed to be more on the individual effects. And I did appreciate how it wasn't a call to action on the part of the viewer, like kind of buying into like, we know conscious consumerism is like a lie, right? And that it's the corporations who need to like, I mean, it's always good to, you know, like manage and keep an eye on like your own actions, but the corporations are the ones who will make it the difference. But, you know, near the end, the guy with the dreads like was like, yeah, you can fight back by never clicking on what's recommended to you on YouTube. Always search for it. I'm like, first of all, no one is going to do that. But, like, I didn't mind that he was suggesting it because it wasn't the, like, thesis of the whole thing. But at the same time, yeah, it made me feel good for a second that it ended that way. But it was incredibly vague. And I mean, I guess the sad thing is that it just has to be vague because they all were like, yeah, we don't really know yet, but I think we will in a long time, like, know how to fix this.
And the other sad thing is, like, the people that they're getting for this are obviously, like, the best and, like, the most morally upstanding of the people you have in Silicon Valley. And if even they can't really broach the issue, it's like the people that are actually running and calling the shots are much, much worse, and they're not quitting due to ethical issues. So where does that leave us?
Yep.
So guys, is this documentary, is it alarmist? Is it, one thing that I had in my head when watching it was like this sort of like fake news, like, you know, like looking at fake news as some sort of new thing, or like looking at like how media is sensationalized. They almost seem to view it as like, this is something that like we're dealing with now, and it's like, no, go back to like a newspaper article from the late 1700s or early 1800s in a presidential election. They were saying that like the opponent like had sex with a cow. Like they were doing like ridiculous things since then. And so I was wondering if you guys thought that this documentary was too doom and gloom, it was too alarmist, it was like, all right, take a step back, calm down, let's think about this, or do you think, I guess the antithesis, that's the word, would be that all of those problems are exacerbated by like social media and phones and the proliferation of that? It's the medium. The medium is the message.
The medium is the massage.
Massage.
Well, I think like the thing I didn't think was alarmist, and it's something that I actually read like a GQ profile from Zach Barron a couple weeks ago from Jerron, the white guy with dreads. So I think like did better explaining a lot of these issues than the documentary did, and like the way that it sort of touched on how it's like actually changing our brains and like changing the way we think. I think is like pretty interesting and not alarmist. And I don't know, maybe the best way and best lens to talk about that is through, like you were saying, like the body issue, sort of part of the story that I didn't think it focused on really enough. Like in the family, we get like a little bit with that girl played by Sophie Hammond, the youngest child in the family, and then it sort of doesn't, like in my opinion, like resolve her story in any sort of meaningful way, and it like focuses on the extremism, which like I think that is a little bit alarmist, even though it sort of like touches on issues that I think are important and then kind of like leaves them by the wayside in a sense.
Yeah, all she did was like smash the food safe and then stare into a mirror sadly.
She stared into a mirror hard. Yeah.
Which like I
stared at that mirror.
I burst out laughing when she broke the safe. I thought that was hilarious, because who in their right mind, I guess she's not in her right mind, but like is like can't like, you know, itching at the like just like desperate to get their phone. I don't know. See, it's stuff like that where this documentary's point of view, I was on this point of view like years ago. Like I guess it didn't have to convince me, and so I was just already there. And so when it takes it a step further and makes it a little ridiculous, it loses me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why they had all of these like stupid analogies like throughout the entire thing, where they're like, it's like magic, and then they did like the magic sequence, and he was doing his coin trick and stuff, and then the bicycle analogy that you like mentioned earlier, I was like, whoa, like these two things are like not the same thing. Like I mean, I think like a couple of years ago, Caleb, I'm pretty sure you and I got into like a heavy argument about in the DC thing about we were talking about AI and like the, you know, the destructive nature and the scariness of it or whatever. And I think I was very much pro, like, if we were living in the time of the Industrial Revolution, like, we would be freaking the fuck out about like all of the things that are very much normalized now, like cars and factories and whatever. And that was also like a time of like huge upheaval and societal and cultural change, where like people are literally migrating to cities and stuff. So the bicycle thing is like not a great analogy, but I think there is something different about this. And like I don't know. I guess the only lens that I have done more research through for my thesis, which I'll plug here if anyone wants to read it, Lord of the Rings and White Supremacy. If you just type in Lord of the Rings and racism, it'll come up on Google.
Ooh,
it will. There's actually
that
like
SEO.
literally like 2,000 people have like read this thing, and I'm like, who are you? But thank you. But anyways, But the only way that I've like done more research into it from that is through the lens of like white supremacism, and they talked a little bit about the alt-right movement, and it was kind of like touched around it, but like a little bit of like something called eco-fascism too. And I think that's like one lens that I've studied that like is kind of scary, how social media and the internet, where these groups can basically like use things like Reddit threads or whatever. I'm not really on Reddit, so subreddits or whatever, and use like specifically memes as this way of, you know, collecting more people with similar, more, you know, white supremacism, and the alt-right is like white supremacism light or whatever, where they're like able to use these awful opinions through this like meme format, which is more acceptable, which leads to like more radicalization within the group, which then can transfer to the real world. And we've seen that with like the Charlottesville riots or whatever. That was like a group that had originated online and then met in person. So that's something, I guess, like maybe access to people online that then translates to like real world things. So I don't know, that's the only like part of this that I've like researched more thoroughly. So in that regards, I think it is different. But
there has to be a documentary on memes. Someone has to make it.
I think there's a documentary coming out this year about the little frog guy, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
There is, yes. Or the guy who created him, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't like obviously seen it. I don't think it's available for watch yet, but maybe we can cover that whenever it comes out and link this back in somehow.
I'm down. This also made me, this week I also watched This Is Paris, the Paris Hilton doc on YouTube.
I heard that was so good.
It is. And it's crazy because, like, so it talks about her life in the ways that you would probably expect, but it also reveals a trauma from her childhood and kind of connects, I think, in a way that's a little bit overreaching, like tracing all of her problems back to this one trauma. But obviously, like, all the problems that it's caused in her life are incredibly valid. And but besides like that aspect of it, the revelation, everything else about it and about her, it's nuts to me that like we have not had this discussion earlier. I feel like now we're having this kind of reckoning, like we all realized kind of collectively in the past year that we all owe Megan Fox an apology for the way that we treated her. And I think the same thing is happening with Paris Hilton. And I think it also maybe has ties to, like, you know, in the past few years, the rise in nostalgia for like the aesthetic of the early 2000s. And there's, you know, like 10 million different Instagram accounts, like 2000s baby or like whatever, like just like bedazzled razors and that kind of thing. But it was nuts to like hear her talk about how she was considered the first influencer and how she feels responsible for like these kids growing up with social media. She's like, I cannot imagine what it's like, and I feel like I created a monster. So it's interesting. I feel like there are new conversations coming up, which, you know, like, who knew, I guess.
Yeah, and that is the part I thought was interesting about the documentary, too. Like, at the very end when they say, you know, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's like, we have to figure out a way to deal with this now and, like, figure out how to live around these things and live better around these things. But then it doesn't really, like, it sends you to its website, which I haven't visited, I'll be honest, but like it doesn't really in the documentary explore any of that. I don't know.
And I think we're in the unique position of being the final like group of people who lived pre-smartphone and can like remember it, and then also was a part of our growing up is having a smartphone. And so we have like the unique sort of perspective of like oh, I remember when like cell phones were just flip phones, and then like all of a sudden in 8th grade, like everybody had an iPhone, which for me at least, I've felt that social media has changed my brain, and I can be very personally alarmist, where I'm like, I'm a different person than who I was, and my roommates make fun of me because I'm always talking about how like I'm not sharp, like my brain is foggy, I'm not like 100% there, and I'm always like talking about this, and they're like, what are you talking about? Like breathe. And so, like, I'm wondering if you guys feel like, Brooke, you talked about how you feel like social media's influenced you, but Arjun and Alicia, like, do you guys feel that some of the points in this documentary rang true personally?
Yeah. Yes, I would say that I am not like obsessed to the point, like I'm not as obsessed as the main character, I guess, like, or his sister. I barely go on Instagram. I post like every couple of months. I probably post on my Finsta like every 1.5 months, and then my my Rinsta like every 4 months. But Facebook, I do have an issue with Twitter in terms of like using it, but also in terms of how it makes me feel. And I know it makes me feel bad, but I just use it anyway because I'm like, I need to be in the know. Not just like I need to know about the news, but I need to know the takes on the news too. And I definitely get way too much of my news from Facebook too. But it is interesting, like watching this, it made me think about, and I'm sure like you guys will relate, like us being kind of cuspers, like not quite millennial, not quite Gen Z. But in this specific regard, definitely leaning towards millennial. Like, I think whenever I'm asking myself, which one am I? What it comes down to is like, did I grow up on social media? No, I got a Facebook in like, 7th or 8th grade. And yeah, I had a flip phone until like, I don't know, like late in high school. I didn't get an iPhone until like fairly late. And I think that is what makes the difference. Like, our brains have definitely since then been wired to think about things differently and shaped by social media. But the fact that we were not finding our value through likes and shaping our self-images through like Snapchat filters as children, I think is huge. And yeah, I admire all Gen Zs because like middle school is a hellscape and I cannot imagine it being any worse. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of started dominating my life, at least in like high school, and it definitely, I think, had an influence on shaping who I was, which I think is interesting. I probably don't want to think too much about, but I mean, at the same time, like I deleted my Instagram and my Facebook earlier during quarantine just because like spending too much time on it. Like I was like, I don't really care what's going on in people's lives if people can't really go out, and if people are going out, I don't really want to see it. So like, gonna delete that. But then I sort of just started spending more time on Twitter and got more addicted to Twitter, and I am like, admittedly, like a Twitter addict. Like it's my pack a day of cigarettes. Like I wake up every morning and I spend half an hour on Twitter in my bed, and it's terrible. But yeah, I think like it definitely, social media has played a part in shaping my identity more than I would like to. So that part did speak to me in a way that I'd rather not dig into too much, but maybe that's the point of it. And I do think, and I think people have mentioned this as well, like critics have mentioned this of the film, that like it is a little bit to our generation who might, get a little bit arrogant sometimes and think, oh, we know about these things, so we're not going to let them affect us. And I did feel that a little bit during the documentary, but at the same time, I do think that our generation, especially as us like cuspers who aren't like Gen Z, stamped in Gen Z, we're so aware of the way that these things are shaping our lives, even though sometimes we know that it can be bad for us. And I think that is a key difference, even though maybe it doesn't make it better, because we still spend a lot of time on these things.
I'm definitely addicted to Twitter as well. I deleted it, but But the thing is I'm logged in the web browser. So I'm always, but then I feel guilty when I go onto there's like, for some reason, there's the guilt there that stops me.
That's what I was with Instagram. Like, I had the app deleted, and I would always go into the Safari on my phone and go to Instagram.com, and I was like, I have to deactivate. Like, this is bad.
Yeah, I took a class my freshman year it was called Media Seductions with Liz Losh, and we read a book on neuroplasticity and the internet and how it's changing the way that our brains think. And one of the metaphors that stuck with me was that the book posits that before the internet, that we tended as humans to like deep dives. We liked to get really engrossed in something. We liked to think a lot about one particular thing. Everybody had their specialty, and that's how that was. And then since the internet, since so much information is around you all the time, that it's no longer like you're diving deep and that's the way your brain likes to think of information. It's now like a very shallow pool that's huge, that you can go anywhere, but your brain doesn't want to dig deeper than that shallow edge. And that's something that I've really, really, really felt my brain do since like Twitter, really. Because Twitter comes in such small bite sizes that I really have to retrain my brain when I'm reading a book or doing academic reading for class, or even like sometimes sitting down and watching a movie. Like, I really sometimes have to turn off my phone and shove it to the other side of the room, because otherwise I literally feel like I'm automatically scrolling on Twitter. Like, things like that in the documentary, like I'm 100% on board with, and I try to have some personal responsibility, but I don't know how far my willpower goes.
I think, sorry, I'm running away from the sun, so I will be moving around. But I think attention span is maybe one of the biggest ways that this has affected me. And like, they even are coming out with apps. Like, I heard this one ad for an app that's like, all the smartest people are using it. Like, it basically gives you like quick tidbits about things. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It gives you like very quick kind of facts or pieces of information about different topics, so that you can like learn, I guess, and become like, I guess, know a little about a lot of things, instead of knowing a lot about one thing. Which, yeah, and I find myself often now, like, I have this yearning to learn and, yeah, dive deep into, like, a particular subject. I'm like, oh, I miss, like, in school when I was learning about, like, this religion, and I'm like, I should really, like, just read a book about it and, like, get back into it. But it's so hard to make myself do that. So hard. Yeah.
I'm just reflecting on, I don't know, I guess the, like, body image is, like, just a good one to work off of, like, as a good example of, like, how is this different from other times or whatever, other comparisons, because, like, obviously in my psychology classes when we would talk about, you know, like, body image, like, disorders or whatever, or, like, eating disorder thing, and so it was, like, a whole topic, and the textbook was a little outdated, so it was talking about like magazines and the female body in particular or whatever, or like in other film classes we've talked about, you know, movies being the primary thing where like women feel shitty about themselves. Essentially, like, where and how are women feeling shitty about themselves in the present time? And I think something that's different with the Instagram thing is that you're not just seeing like supermodels or whatever and like comparing yourself to them, but with the rise of like filters or Photoshop or Facetune or whatever, you're seeing like your friends, so it becomes like a much more like close-knit like comparative thing where you're like, oh, people in my like inner circle like look like this or whatever. And the fact that you can use the same tools like on your own body, which didn't really like exist before this in such a like easy user-friendly capacity where you could just like do it, like edit your photo within like literally a 30-second like feature. Like, it's just like a different beast and a different thing in that sense. But yeah, I guess I kind of came on late to the social media game. So I guess I'm not particularly addicted to one over the rest of them, but I absolutely like bop between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and my email. I think the email's an interesting one because I think I've been like trained to hope that I'm going to like receive good news from there or something, or like receive like really important things, like even on my school account that I am no longer a student. I'm like anything, like any updates on there, anything important. So yeah, that's also just a weird one. It's not just the social media things, but
Yeah, I think it's interesting just like to loop that back to like film watching in general too, because like you're saying, like my attention span in general is kind of shot whenever my phone is even near me. Like I saw a study once that like you are less likely to be able to focus on something if your phone is even like in eye shot of wherever you're sitting. And like even when I was watching this movie, which like it's not like watching like a serious drama as much as like there is dramatic parts of this movie, like I almost excuse myself, like, oh, you can check your phone for like 30 seconds here and there, or it's like that's a big part of what I miss about movie theaters too, just like being forced to sit in a room for 2.5 hours and just watch what is going on the screen uninterrupted. And like it worries me about the future of just watching things in general if it's all going to be on our screens in our homes. Like, you know, how are we supposed to at large just like appreciate things if we're always just so distracted when we're watching that, you know, like cooking dinner while you're watching your favorite Netflix show or something. I think it's really interesting and like kind of, you know, not scary in the same way a lot of things are, but also kind of just annoying, you know?
Yeah, I feel like Brooke, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's something that the doc didn't really touch on, of like, how do you guys think you've gotten worse in quarantine? I don't know. And another thing that I guess had a broad issue with was like they in the vagueness of like not having a solution is the vagueness of like having a solution, which is like just go outside and like live a rich life. And I'm like, what does that mean? like what does that mean to like to you and right now and for the foreseeable future when we can't really like do much?
I mean, spend more time podcasting.
Okay. Sorry, Alicia, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I feel like in terms of movie watching, I separate everything into like a movie that I can use my phone or my laptop while I'm watching, or a movie that I can't. And when it's a movie that I can't, like that I consider like an actual movie that I want to be emotionally invested in, like I'm super militant about it, just because like that it's so sacred to me. But at the same time, like on the flip side, if I'm just like putting on like, you know, a shitty perhaps Fast and Furious franchise film on the TV just like while I'm doing something, I'll have my laptop open and or my phone open at the same time. It's like I have to be, if there's like a shitty, not a shitty, but like anything less than what I consider to be like a movie that deserves my full like undivided attention and like emotional investment, then I have to, it's like a requirement for me to have another screen in front of me to do something else at the same time. And also something that I just realized that ties into this that we haven't really talked about is like stan culture and how social media, yeah, in the way that Brooke said, like being able to find a group of people, I guess it can be great in some ways, yeah. But with stan culture, I think it also creates the issue of like the issue behind quote unquote cancel culture, which doesn't exist. But when everyone is like has the platform to constantly and like really publicly idolize people and put them on a pedestal, it, you know, whenever it creates like a concept, not a human, and then when the person turns out to be a human, everything comes crumbling down. And so I think that, you know, like back in classic Hollywood, I get, you know, there were movie stars, but it wasn't like there were definitely people, I guess, that you could be like a super fan of, and, you know, I guess when I think about like the Beatles and that kind of thing, but in this age when we like you take someone and make them your like defining trait, like they are who you are and everything you do most of the day is like surrounding them. If they do something kind of fucked up, then like there goes your identity, and it creates a lot of problems. Anyway, yeah.
This is a good time to pause because I'm realizing that the Zoom never stopped for 40 minutes. Do I have a good Zoom account?
Do you?
I don't know. I'm confused as I thought I didn't, but
I say we just roll with it. Don't ask too many questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask.
Also, my audio at one point stopped recording, so that's fun. And then I started a new one, so I'm not sure how much is missing.
Well, at least we'll definitely have it on the Zoom.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
All right. I think we've been recording for an hour.
Should we wrap it up?
That's what I'm wondering. Do you all have any sort of other topics?
Or do you want to mention?
What you were saying... Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I was just gonna ask if you wanted to mention The Devil All the Time.
Oh yeah, we can talk about. We can pivot to like. Oh, what have you watched this week? If you want, or if Arjun, if you have something that you want to say.
We always... Arjun, what did you watch?
Yeah, I watch The Devil All the Time, like a little bit yesterday and a little bit today. So another one of these like classic Netflix things where I probably wasn't giving it the attention that it deserved, but also because I was watching it for Robert Pattinson, and like there I am 45 minutes in and Robert Pattinson still hasn't showed up. And I don't know, I didn't love the movie personally. I need to give it a little bit more thought because I literally finished it probably like 20 minutes before we started recording. But I was saying this to Alicia before we went on, and like if Robert Pattinson wants to just get the bag from Netflix to do an insane, not at all realistic accent like once every year, like he did in the David Michôd movie last year, and like he did in this Antonio Campos film this time, like I'm totally fine with that. Like that scene of Robert Pattinson with his French accent in The King just being like the little cock, like is going to be stuck in my head for as long as time, as long as I live. So like whatever, I didn't love that. I also did not love The King as much as I love Pattinson and Timothée Chalamet, but I'm glad the movies exist. I can just say that.
I'm sorry I didn't join you in watching The Devil All the Time. I know I said I would, but I had other things, I guess, to watch. But speaking of stan culture, we definitely do stan Rob Pattinson.
Yeah.
Pro Bobby Pat's podcast, yeah.
Yeah.
Chaotic good.
Did anybody else watch anything interesting this week? Any recommendations?
I watched Unpregnant on HBO Max, and it was like fine. Yeah, I'm glad it exists. It's kind of like a fun version of Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which I don't mind, and the cast is great. And I did appreciate a few little, like, it was kind of not very it was kind of ordinary in most ways, but one thing that I appreciated was like one character getting an abortion, having a parent who supports them without agreeing with them, which I felt like was something I haven't really seen before. So yeah, it's a fun thing to watch, and I would recommend This Is Paris, yeah. And I finally watched First Cow, and I loved it so much. And I've been listening to the guy who did the music for it, like all week. Yeah.
Can we talk about First Cow? Can we pivot to First Cow?
Yeah.
We can just do an entire First Cow podcast. That is worthy of us just
Honestly,
like dishing for an hour about it. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love an excuse to rewatch that film. Because I that was my last movie theater, real like ticket in a movie theater. So I think about it often.
Yeah.
That's a good comfort watch. I feel like it should. It's such a. Oh, we'll save it for the pod that we do.
Just get you thinking about eating buttermilk pancakes.
Oh man!
Oh my god! It made me
little
want
oily cakes.
Yes. I was like, I need an egg, like biscuit thing, like even from McDonald's. I was like, when was the last time I wanted McDonald's? But now I do.
Oh, that's good. Brooke, you see anything?
I watched the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice for probably like the 5th time. Still solid even after the 5th viewing. If anyone wants to meet me in a field and gently graze past my hand, I am down. That is the best out of that film. But I watched the first episode of Ratchet, whatever. Sarah Paulson. It was okay. I don't know. I don't know that I'll be continuing with it, but the fashion and the colors were great. And also, I don't know what First Cow is, and I haven't seen it, and I'm confused. But but I will watch it if we do a podcast on it.
Brooke, you know Meek's Cutoff? Yeah, so it's that filmmaker, Kelly Reichardt. It's her recent going.
Okay, I also have not seen Meek's Cutoff.
We watched it for class. I thought...
I do.
Wow. Did we say we were going to share this with the film department? Cause,
Okay, I don't think... Was it Barnard? He
Yeah.
won't.
Well,
he won't listen to this.
Brooke, I thought I have like a clear memory in my mind because we sat together in that class because I didn't watch it, and I remember like you. I thought I have a clear memory of you being like, Caleb, like why would you not watch it? Like,
I mean, I probably also said that. You didn't have to know my secret that I don't watch it. Weren't they like wearing? It's like old timey. They're wearing Little House on the Prairie dresses and like carrying buckets or something. Isn't that like a prominent scene? That's all I know.
Yeah.
It sounds like all of her movies.
Long dresses.
I also just remembered I've been watching like a lot more TV lately, which is not really, I'm usually much more film oriented, but HBO Max is like popping. The new Luca Guadagnino series, We Are Who We Are, I really liked the first episode, and the most recent episode of Lovecraft Country was so, like, by far my favorite so far. And then also, there's something else. Well, I don't know if we've talked about I May Destroy You, but everyone needs to watch it. It's one of the most amazing shows I've seen, like, in my entire life. Yeah, HBO Max. Get that subscription.
I need to. I don't have it.
That HBO Max is so clutch. I've been binging a lot of the Turner Classics that they've got on there, and oh man, like they have so many good movies. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I was gonna say I've also been like trying to catch up with some 2020 stuff that I missed just from this year, and like I watched 3 Netflix movies of like varying goodness, and Banana Split and like Eurovision Song Contest did not really love either of them. But surprisingly, I really dug Horse Girl. And yeah, I know Caleb, you're probably not the biggest fan based off your Letterboxd, but I was enthralled, especially by the first half of it, and just like watching Alison Brie slowly go like paranoid and crazy over conspiracy theories, and like considering the world at large and how I've sort of become like a little bit more obsessed with some conspiracy theories over like quarantine and like reading about these sort of like crazy things. I thought it was hilarious and I thought it was interesting. Didn't love the ending, but I was like super into it for like a solid hour and 10 minutes. So a soft recommendation.
Yeah, I will actually say Horse Girl has grown in my estimation since watching it. I did not like it after having seen it, but now I respect it for being how strange it was.
Right. Like at the very least, it was like not just trying to be your typical Netflix rom-com, which like it seemed like it was going to be for a bit. And like I really respect how interesting it was trying to be. And I don't know, maybe I'm going soft after like a whole summer of not really many good new movies, but I dug it.
I also caught up with some not 2020 releases, but just those like Netflix movies that have sat on your queue for like 6 months. So I watched Hugo, the Scorsese Méliès film, and I think that was a great comfort watch. That was just a Like, I feel good about watching this, and I'm sure my girlfriend, like, my Letterboxd reviews, I'm sure my girlfriend loved every time I was like, so the thing about Millie is that's the great train robbery. Whoa! Like, so that was a fun watch. Watched Inside Man. Spike Lee does it again in that film. That was an exciting film. I watched Modern Romance because Albert Brooks films are now on the Criterion Channel, and I hadn't seen one, and I loved it. It's I know you guys know who Albert Brooks is because he was Marlin in Finding Nemo. So that's the baseline. Everybody knows who his voice is at least. But I had never seen like one of his films. And Modern Romance is this like anti-rom-com about like this neurotic film editor who like is too neurotic to have a consistent relationship. So he and his girlfriend are like super toxic and going back and forth on each other, and it sounds like a harrowing watch, but it's hilarious. It's one of like the funniest things. And as like a neurotic TV editor watching it with my girlfriend, it was this weird, like she kept being like, that's you, that's literally you. I was like, oh, that's not good, that guy's not good. But hopefully I'm a bit better than he was in that film. But yeah,
I recently watched him in Broadcast News, and he was great. That was something that had been on my list for a while.
The director of Broadcast News is also a character in Modern Romance.
Oh.
Playing like a weird schlocky... Not really, because he does play a director, but the director is sort of like this like B-movie schlocky director who doesn't quite know what he's doing, and Albert Brooks is like the editor being like, no, you let me edit your film, I know what I'm doing. Like it was a funny, very funny movie.
What's your take on the editor discourse that has made its way back onto film Twitter this past week?
Where it's like what's the gist of that discourse? That like
basically like long movies are bad.
Yeah, long movies bad, short movies good.
I do like a solid 90-minute, but
yeah, I don't know that I have much takes on that. Just like my only take on editing is that when it's like cut, it's bad, and when it's not that, it's good. That's my main take.
So you're a huge Bohemian Rhapsody fan.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I've not seen that film, and I hope I never will. On that note,
it's worth it. Like I would put it in a double feature with Walk Hard, either that or Walk the Line, and just like watch them bang back to back to see just how like more hilarious Walk Hard is. So, if anything.
Walk Hard is another one of those like been on my Netflix list for months, so maybe I'll give that a watch.
It's a quick watch. You should knock it out. It's really good.
Sounds good to me. Well, anybody have any final words, last takes, last things to say? All right, this was your second episode of I'm Thinking of Watching Things. Thank you for watching and or listening. Yeah, have a good week, everybody. Oh wait, next week we are gonna be talking about Enola Holmes, the new Netflix movie starring Millie Bobby Brown and Henry Cavill and who was the other guy? Who was Mike?
Sam Claflin.
Sam Claflin. And so we'll be talking about that. Have a good week, everyone.
I'm thinking of posting things. Does that work with this movie? Never mind.
I'm thinking of sleuthing.
Deleting my social media.
Cool.